I need more time for that.
Huge. Yo guys, what is up? Max in our Path of Exile 2 video, and today I wanted to kind of update our crit oracle werewolf build and update you on what we're running, and also mainly talk about fixing some of your survivability issues, increasing our clear speed, and starting to like scale the build into endgame. This build was incredible in the campaign. It was a little tricky when I first got to maps. Definitely was dying a lot. My clear speed wasn't what I wanted it to be, and we've done a lot of things to like improve all that and fix it. So I wanted to cover everything you guys need to know. Let's do this. So the first thing I want to talk about is improving your survivability, and there's not just like one thing. It is multiple avenues. Obviously, there is the like inherent, you just want to have some armor reduction, you're going to want some energy shield, you're going to want some resistances, but a few of the tricks that we're using now to gain back life and survivability have to do with some things that we've done with our tree and our gear. So that's what I want to talk about first. The first is that we're picking up Zealot's Oath. This reads that excess life recovery from regeneration is applied to your energy shield. Energy shield does not recharge. Now, energy shield can be a really nice defensive layer. However, if you're not recharging it and it just goes away, it's not really doing anything for you. Evasion builds have a lot easier time of picking up some things that can give you recharging energy shield, and this is a really easy pickup with just a little bit of life gain and life regen. We can actually have our energy shield, even if it's a small amount of energy shield, providing a whole lot more of a defensive layer for us. So right now I only at base have 72 life recovery per second from our regeneration, which means that my energy shield will constantly be gaining 72 energy shield per second. However, if we do some new tech with pounce, we can create consecrated ground, which now I have 192 energy shield per second whenever we're on our consecrated ground. Meaning that I'm basically, I plan on getting more energy shield later, but I'm basically regenerating half of my energy shield per second, which is really, really cool. So how this kind of works is, like right now, if an enemy hits me, my energy shield immediately begins recovering from that hit, as long as I have health, and we're going to have a lot of ways to get health. But any hit that I take, my energy shield immediately comes back from, and then if we're on our consecrated ground, that regen is even faster. It like fights really, really hard to get that energy shield back for us. So that is kind of one of the defensive layers that we can do, is energy shield plus consecrated ground on our pounce, which allows us to get a decent amount of health regen and have that little bit of energy shield doing a whole lot more for us. Obviously, that's not going to prevent you from like a one-shot depleting all of your energy shield, but as an effective hit pool, energy shield works a whole lot better if it's constantly regenning. Even though we don't have like a ton of it right now, having it constantly up and protecting our health pool will do a lot for us. For our other layers of survivability, so the first thing that we're doing, and it's like super cheap, costs like a few exalts, we're gonna be, once we get more survivability later on from our gear and having more expensive stuff, we're gonna go for like a more expensive anoint. We're gonna be upgrading our amulet pretty often, so I didn't want to like do something too crazy, so I just picked up taut flesh as an anoint on your amulet. You can do these with the oils, and because we're constantly up close range, this means that any pretend time that we're taking physical damage, we're just going to be recouping that as life. So that's one way to get a little bit of extra survivability. We're also picking up nodes like Resilient Soul, which gives us increased life regen and percent of our damage taken recouped as life. So if we're taking Fizz, 25% of any physical incoming damage, physical is the most common, is going to be a regen to us as life over 8 seconds, which is really nice. We're also using things with life on kill. My talisman right now has 55 life on enemy kill. Not really that important on your talisman because you're eventually going to want to get things like damage rolls there. But with the spirit that we can pick up on a chest piece, I'm rocking Cannibalism, which gives us 3% of our max life recovered on kill. We're clearing like big packs of enemies. So, you're hitting a pack of enemies and like at minimum, you're getting like 10% of your life back on kill. Plus, we've got life regen. The life regen still applies to our health. It only applies to our shield when it's full. So getting some life on kill, getting cannibalism, getting some recoup, and all of a sudden the build is a lot more well-rounded with survivability. There's other things that we're going to be doing with our armor and our energy shield later, but it's feeling a whole lot better into maps, and so that's why I kind of wanted to go over. There is the node Scared Faith, which gives you percent of your physical damage prevented recouped as energy shield per enemy power. Energy shield does not recharge. This is also, like, if you don't have any energy shield or any source of life regen or recharge like that, this is a decent pickup. I do think that later the Zealot's Oath will scale better because we actually have ways of scaling this. However, it does take a little bit of investment with basically zero investment. This is also a decent node, but I don't think it's going to work quite as well as Zealot's Oath later on. So now let's go over our skills and gems and everything else that you need to know. So our main damage is still from Shred. I've got Rapid Attacks, Elemental Armament, Close Combat 2, and we've added Long Fuse. Long Fuse is an option here. It kind of depends on how you want to play. Long Fuse gives the detonations or the like ice that is getting shredded off with Shred a bigger detonation, so it's more impact on bosses. However, it'll make it worse for like mapping because you kind of need to detonate it with Cross Slash. If you're looking for it to feel a little bit smoother in like clearing maps, you can use Crescendo 2, which means that you get 15% more attack speed leading up to your final strike, and then you final strike twice. Long Fuse will give you like better boss damage though. Then in our auras and things like that, we're using Bark Skin. I just activated this. This will be a lot more impactful once we get more energy shield. Basically, whenever we're hit, we gain armor equal to 41% of our energy shield lost, which is just another stacking armor. We're getting a lot of mitigation from our armor, so more armor is good, but we will need more energy shield to really like make this tech. In Lunar Assault, we're using Bater's Vengeance. I believe I talked about this in our last video. I picked this up for 2 exalts. It's definitely more expensive now. But when you freeze with this skill, whatever skill is attached to, you're going to get 1% of your rage as extra damage. Sorry, for every 1 rage you have, you get that as extra damage. We have tons of rage, so this is a massive buff for the entire build. We've also got Deep Freeze. So when we freeze enemies with Lunar Assault, they stay frozen for longer. Elemental Armament, and I put Cold Pen on. Lunar Assault is one of the few skills that we've got that fully or mostly converts to cold damage. So we're going to want those hits, like making sure that they're just going right through cold resistances. Ours is right now at 71% Cold Pen, which is huge. By the way, our current stats for our like crit chance and crit damage, we have a 38% crit chance. We're aiming to get to 40% crit chance, so we're getting really close. And then we've got 277% crit damage bonus. Definitely want to work on that, but we're getting up there. On Lunar Blessing, this is probably the biggest quality of life to the build. So in terms of clear, one of the biggest things that we can do is have Lunar Blessing up 100% of the time. I've messed around a lot with trying to make the clear on this build better. For quite a while, I was using Cast on Elemental Ailment with Frost Wall and Boundless Energy. Frost Wall creates a spell that does a bunch of flat cold damage and explodes and hits enemies. And those detonations along with our like ice crystal detonations were really nice, and like if we had more spirit, I would be using this. I think for later scaling, the more uptime on Lunar Blessing is going to be better, and so instead of using the 100 spirit for like a cast on freeze setup, we're using Eternal Rage. This gives us constant regen of rage. Now, this is a lot of spirit. However, it enables a lot of different nodes that we can take advantage of that we weren't. One of the biggest things is prior in our last video, I hadn't unlocked my Third Ascendancy. Now that we've got our Third Ascendancy, we can pick up Anger Management. Our Third Ascendancy point is for the Unseen Path, Walk the Path Not Taken. This is a fantastic node. It opens up like 180 new skill nodes in our tree, which we're going to be taking advantage of quite a few. But this gives us plus 15 to max rage with another plus 3. So we're getting 21 max rage. off of just this node, which more max rage is more attack damage, but it's also more damage gained as cold, but it is also more duration of our Lunar Blessing, since this scales off of the amount of rage that you have. And if we take this node, we have 200% faster start of inherent rage loss. Rage starts to degen after you haven't dealt damage or been taken any damage. So it taking basically every second would be really hard to maintain. However, with getting rage every second, it's no longer possible to lose rage with eternal rage, because we're gaining rage every time that we would be losing it. And so that allows us to basically never have to worry about having 100% uptime on Lunar Blessing. And with the second wind support, we're able to have a Lunar Blessing up 100% of the time, which is massive for our clear speed. Lunar Blessing is providing us with a lot of forward clear, as it'll attack out in front of you. And this has been a huge quality of life to the build. In Lunar Blessing, I've got Magnified Area, Elemental Armament, Super Crit for 100% more crit or increased crit damage bonus, and Second Wind on Lunar Blessing. That means that we have a 30% crit chance with 377 crit damage bonus. Once again, we always crit, so our crit chance isn't important to determine if we crit or not. It's important to determine how many times our crit re-rolls. The less times that it re-rolls, the more crit that it will deal. But I think that's well worth the trade-off for the damage that it's going to give us. And then for the rest of the gems, basically using what we were in the last video, still using Herald Device with Magnified Area, Frozen Spite, Elemental Armament, and Elemental Focus. In Pounce, we're rocking Holy Descent. This is what's giving us our Consecrated Ground. You can play really aggressive with this, so just like jump on any rare or elite. You'll have a ton of survivability, and then you just freeze them. We've got Mark of Siphoning as well, so that when we do mark them, we're leeching mana and attack damage. Just a little bit of extra survivability. And then Freezing Mark. This is not a support skill. I get a lot of questions about this. You need to cut a skill gem and then put the skill gem in Pounce. It will replace the Predator's Mark. And then lastly, we're using Cold Exposure, so that when we jump on an enemy, we expose them and reduce their resistances so that we can deal more damage to them. And then the last thing that we added to the build is Ferocious Roar. This is very much optional. You really don't need to worry about this, but it can be nice. Basically, Ferocious Roar is a roar skill, and with Raging Cry, this generates rage, and then Raging Cry gives us even more rage. If it is you're like entering a map or entering an instance where you don't have any rage and you don't want to wait for all of your rage to build up, you can just click this button and you'll get it instantly. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just additional quality of life if you have extra skill gem slots. For our gear on your weapon, you're looking for a high amount of physical DPS. We are converting a lot of our fizz damage into elemental damage. So high fizz is really good, plus some added cold is pretty nice. Your ideal weapon's probably going to have some sort of like percent increase to fizz with added fizz, extra cold, or like increased damage with elemental attacks would also be quite good. On your suffixes, we're looking for a high crit chance. Crit chance is super important on your talisman because it's the base of all of your crits. If you pick up a 50% crit chance increase, it's 50% increase of your base. Your base is determined by your weapon. And then crit damage and like attack speed, all would be really good. I'm not currently using plus level of skills, which will be really, really nice, but we do need to invest a little bit more into mana sustain if we're going to want to put like a big increase to our melee skills, because anytime they increase, they'll also increase in cost. On your rings, I am no longer using the Pulse Ricken. I used it during the campaign. We're freezing everything instantly and detonating them instantly anyways, so not really necessary. Your rings are a great spot to pick up some extra added cold damage, grab some life and some resistances. That's kind of basically what both of my rings are right now. On your helmet, we're going to want to look for a big armor helmet with max life and some resistances. You can also get crit chance on your helmet, which would be pretty nice. Your body armor, we want a big roll to spirit, and then as much armor and energy shield as you can get. If you can find any armor with the percentage of armor applies to elemental damage, that's also a really, really nice stat. On your gloves, this is actually a pretty good place to pick up some extra damage. I've got plus level 2 melee skills and attack speed, as well as some decent armor and energy shield. On your belt, good spot to find life regen. I went for some life, some double reses, and some life regen. Boots, once again, movement speed and some resistances and some life regen. Kind of what we're looking for there. And then on your amulet, once again, spirit, some life, and some resistances. Nothing too crazy. Some other things to note real quick about your gear is if you are looking for like a unique for this build, we would replace it later. But the Beacon of Aziz Solar Amulet is pretty cheap right now. It's a decent pickup. It reads that your critical hits ignore enemy monster elemental resistances, plus it gives you some free spirit. So that is going to be a pretty nice one. The other unique to pick up would be, or things to buy for this build, are going to be the Bahatur's Vengeance. This just gives you so much extra damage. Definitely a big pickup if you don't have one yet. They are increasing in price, though. For our skill tree, another thing to mention is that I originally was going for a kind of like a weapon set 1, weapon set 2 thing, which in theory was going to work really well. My idea was to put Lunar Blessing in a weapon set that just spec'd into as much AoE as possible. So we're grabbing like Primal Growth for increased area of effect of our attacks. We had nodes like Encompassing Domain, which grabbed a lot of AoE. However, Lunar Assault doesn't seem to work if it is not in, if it's like not on both of your weapon sets, or at least not associated with your different attacks. So, for example, if I had Lunar Blessing on weapon set 1, and then Lunar Assault on weapon set 2, and Shred on weapon set 2, then it would never proc unless it was on the same weapon set, if that makes sense. And so we've kind of opted, instead of doing a different weapon set, to just kind of homogenize things. So we're doing a little bit less min-max in that sense. However, because we now can put all of our damage on one weapon set, we can actually put Savage Fury on a second weapon set, which we are not using. I believe the first person to discover this was Woolie. I'll have a link down to his channel below. Basically, this allows you to have Savage Fury up as a buff that is not going to cost any spirit, but still works normally, and that allows us to socket additional things like Bark Skin or our Eternal Rage. For the skill tree, now that we have our Unseen Path, we can pick up some big nodes like Calculated Hunter for increased crit chance. We can also go over here and get Piercing Claw for Ellie Pen plus skill speed, and then we get the Unseen Path node for 8% of our damage as an extra damage of a random element while shapeshifted. That's pretty nice. We did take away points from Molten Claw. We'll probably be back there potentially later. And I took some points out of Dimensional Weak Spot. We're also, like, a lot of these nodes are really good, but with the Unseen Path nodes, we had to change some things up, and we really wanted some of these big Unseen Path nodes, such as Calculated Hunter. Still using Tribal Fury. This gives all of our strikes splash damage, so this helps a lot with AoE clear. If you're hitting multiple enemies, or hitting one enemy with Shred, there's an enemy next to them, you can hit both of them, so that helps a ton. Guys, this is going to do it for the build guide update. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.